and she'll be talking about global mobility as a lifestyle, HR considerations for supporting international hires, permanent transfers, and digital nomads. Just to give you a little brief about Angie, she's a global mobility coach. She combines intercultural coaching, her long-standing global mobility expertise and workshop facilitation skills into programs for global mobility managers, expats, and expat partners. Um, Angie also defines herself as an author, social media junkie, and Bollywood lover. She has lived and worked in Germany, Switzerland, the UK, India, and Australia. Angie has also worked in international human resources. She specialized in global mobility during her corporate career and was then hired by one of the big four professional service firms in Germany to lead global mobility. She moved to Switzerland with the same company in 2009. She launched her own coaching and training company, Global People Transitions. Her longtime dream and current offers two programs to private individuals, which is Hire Me Express and Rock Me Retreat. Angie is a published author of two workbooks called the Global Mobility Workbook, third edition, 2019, and the Global Career Workbook, 2016. She's also involved in the development of a web application for online coaching, which is Rock Me Up. I love those names. Angie, wonderful to see you. Nice.
Good to see
Welcome
you, Helen.
to very same here. Very, very welcome to the 12th annual HRM Summit. Thank you for your support. Love having you year on year. It's just a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Helen. Shall I start my presentation right away?
Please do a share screen and I'll give you a heads up.
Okay, let me see if that works.
It should.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Just share screen.
Probably did something wrong.
Take your time.
Try again.
Yes, perfect.
Now you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And here we go.
Carry on.
Okay, thanks for the wonderful introduction, Helen.
You're very welcome.
I'm so happy to be here again, even though I was hoping that this year we could meet in person.
I know.
Well, I guess the pandemic has not made that possible yet, but I'm still hopeful for next year.
Next year, definitely.
Let me just get started. My talk today is on global mobility as a lifestyle, HR considerations for supporting international hires, permanent transfers, and digital nomads. And as Helen has already introduced me, I just wanted to add, you can call me Global Mobility Yoda if you wish. I feel about as old as Yoda, and sometimes I also talk in a very confused way. I hope not today for you all. So before we actually dive into the topic, I wanted to tell you how we define global mobility. conscious today on why we need to travel or move to another country. Is it really necessary to move to the other country for work, or can we maybe just work from anywhere? And WFH and WFA are now commonly known abbreviations. And the flight route of global mobility has forever changed. For those of you who have read my book, the Global Mobility Workbook, you will notice these are the 4 drivers of global mobility. We still believe in those 4 drivers, with the business view and the HR view, mainly moving into new markets, sourcing for talent, developing talent, and then the so-called lifestyle expats, which are people moving to another country either to follow their partner or for personal preferences, or because in their generation, they believe this is part of how they should handle their career. So what we think is that today we see global mobility as a lifestyle. It has become immersed in everything we do. It's no longer just for the chosen few. And we are here today to present to you what we call the lifestyle expat. So the lifestyle expat doesn't have a local contract it does have a local contract in the host country, but no guaranteed right of return, no home base anymore. And let's please use the term lifestyle expats for all those groups, even if they aren't the classical expatriates with the big packages anymore. And one of the examples of the lifestyle expat is the story of Heidi and Govind. Yeah, so Heidi and Govind met at the London School of Economics. You can probably gather by their names where they're from. Heidi is originally Swiss, Govind is Indian. And they fell in love, got married, had 2 children, Anush and Anya. And these 2 children speak 4 languages, obviously. Heidi is a successful finance director at a global bank in New York City, and she just found out that she's pregnant. She gets home in the evening when Govind tells her he got an offer to become the main business developer of a pharmaceutical company based out of Abu Dhabi. And here we go. Typical lifestyle expatriation. Heidi wants to follow her husband. He's not on an international assignment. He's got a local offer from this company in Abu Dhabi. And what we suggest to you as HR professionals is to think about now, what can we offer to people like Heidi and Govind? Yeah, this is not the classical expat we're talking about. This is a lifestyle expatriation, and what we would approach them with would be what we call a box of chocolates approach. You might know the movie Forrest Gump, where he often says life is like a box of chocolates. That inspired me to create that term. So in some other companies, you will have different models describing similar ideas. But here the idea is actually very simple, and I think it can also be applied to smaller and medium-sized companies where you might not have so many resources, you might not have a specialized person in global mobility, but you have an HR person dealing with all of this. So you could budget the cost of the move with a simple spreadsheet, and then still allow some flexibility within the budget by monitoring your actual expenses. Then you take some services out of the compensation, but pay them directly. For example, international schools, landlords, and service providers like relocation services, etc. And you let Heidi and Govind select what they need from the box. There is also technology to support this, but for starters, you can do this in a very simple way. Now you can just take a spreadsheet and say, this is what we offer, this is your budget. Now let us know what kind of service you need from the box. And like every user experience, also lifestyle expats go through a sort of experience flight route. I've tried to simplify it for you in 10 steps so that you have something you can work with if you're an HR professional dealing with lifestyle expats. And the first step is to ensure that you're covering regulatory considerations. So for that, you need to check with your CEO and CFO if you need to consider any regulatory issues when hiring from abroad. Some countries, for example, they require licenses. So verify if you need to have certain licenses before you can hire foreign workforce. And then you apply for the license, and obviously you follow the instructions necessary. Sometimes you also have to start your permanent establishment before you can hire anybody from abroad. The second question would be how to source lifestyle expats. So obviously everybody's on LinkedIn. We have Facebook, Twitter, all the social media that are good to talk to talents. But you could also think about looking at specific job sites for digital nomads. So there are some job sites that just offer jobs to digital nomads. You could work with specialized recruiters. Or I also recommend you check dual career groups. You might even have some in your own country that you're not aware of, like the International Dual Career Network or a Facebook group called Expats on Purpose. Check those groups where expat partners hang out, because often they're looking for work and it's not easy for them to find work. And it's often a pool of talent that is not tapped into. Then what do you need to consider when you write the offer letter? So usually you would offer an unlimited contract because often they have to move to another country for you. But I think it's also important that you consider a repatriation clause in the contract. Like, for example, if you make them redundant for whatever reason, that they have a chance to be moved back to their home country or the country they came from. You would also add a condition precedent that the contract will only be valid when the work and residence permit are approved. As I mentioned earlier, immigration is getting complicated. So it could happen that either immigration is delayed or immigration is not approved last minute, or there's a new COVID regulation that you have to adhere to. So make sure that they know that their work contract will only be valid once the work and residence permit are approved. Also negotiate temporary accommodation, housing, schooling, and other services you will provide. And then it's really important that you put it all in writing and ensure that they understand the limits. So for example, if you say, well, you know, we provide housing up to $5,000 that you actually per month, that you actually put into writing what it means, what is included. For example, are utilities included or not in that limit? What happens if they stay under the budget? So just make sure that the communication is very clear, because everybody has different expectations. For example, when it comes to housing, we often don't understand the local housing market, how it works, which costs are included. So make sure that everything you understand as a condition of the contract is very clear to understand. Then what do you need to think about to run the immigration process? You need to check what kind of visas there are. Maybe there is even a digital nomad visa, or generally your country might have an open policy for lifestyle expats, but it's not always the case. So better to know that before you start hiring. Then review also the definition of family and extended family in your immigration requirements. For example, is it possible to bring a non-married spouse? Is it possible to bring a same-sex partner into your country? So whatever is explicitly forbidden, you need to tell the family before they try to maybe bring their in-laws or an adopted child or a child that they're fostering. So just make sure you understand all of that really well. Also, in some countries, you need to provide a labor market check. So you need to prove that you haven't found anybody in the labor market that would actually be able to fill the position. So make sure that you also check that beforehand. And allow lead time for immigration. Remember that your documentation has to be excellent and complete so that you don't run after documents later on in the process. Then the fifth question would be how you could avoid double taxation on personal income. You might think this is not a big deal because in many of your countries there is no tax. Okay, I get it, but it's not the case everywhere in every country. And some citizens, or for example, US green card holders, they're still taxable on their worldwide income no matter where they live. So grant tax equalization in the contract or determine how the home country tax will be reimbursed, or if they are taxable in another country, if they will get any tax support from your end. Seek help from professional tax firms and ensure they have all the information from the services you provide and the package you granted. And pay the tax return and other offboarding administration from the country they depart from. So what I mean is help them to file the tax return on time so that there's not stress later on when they're supposed to be starting already with you. How do you ensure compliance for corporate tax? Another thing that's sometimes overlooked, especially if you don't have a corporate tax department, is do you actually have a legal entity where you can employ the expats? And if you're building up a new site, a new country, check with corporate tax or a global tax provider if the presence of the expats in certain locations for certain duration of time could expose you to a permanent establishment risk, or could create a permanent establishment that you might not want to have in that country. This is especially important if you do not have a legal entity yet in the country you're targeting. Then the seventh part on the flight route is how to improve their social security. As I mentioned earlier, these expats are on local contracts. They don't have a home base anymore, but they need to build up a pension somewhere. So consider offering an international pension plan to them. Add extended family members to the health insurance coverage. For example, in countries like India, it's very common that the parents or the in-laws are covered in the health insurance. So once the expats move to your country, the parents might not have health insurance coverage anymore. So consider that as an option to offer. Also check what they had in the home country and then make sure that they're not losing out for any family members and their coverage. And then I think you should also provide additional insurance coverage against accidents, and they should start right away. So even during transit, because a lot can happen obviously on a flight or during transit. Make sure that you cover them against accidents already from the day that they leave to fly to your place. How do you consider cultural specifics? Now here I would recommend that you brief them on legal issues and traffic laws. Also encourage them to learn the host language or host languages for cultural integration. It's usually really helpful, even if the business language is English. Offer intercultural awareness training. And apprise them also on your expectations with regards to respecting the local culture and holidays. So, for example, how to behave during the holy month of Ramadan or on Fridays in general. What is your expectation? And make sure they understand that before they move. As I said, there are a lot of misconceptions about many things and a lot of misconceptions about cultural difference as well. So I think it's really helpful if people understand that better. Then the ninth point on our flight today would be how to mitigate other liability issues. So if they come as digital nomads, still you have to make sure that they have the correct work permit, because even if they're self-employed and you hire them, you're still liable, and you have to make sure that your providers have the right work permits. Support them so they are compliant in their tax filing and other critical issues in all jurisdictions, and ensure your financial support to expats in case of an accident or have them covered by an accident insurance. And I'm saying this again because it could also really be an issue for your reputation in case there are a lot of accidents happening near or in your company and people aren't covered against accidents. This is obviously more critical if we're talking about construction sites and the building industry. But in my career, unfortunately, I've also seen a lot of accidents happening, which are like just happening, like car accidents, for example. And it's really, really annoying then if the expats don't have good insurance coverage. And how do you consider the whole family system? So that's the last important point on the roadmap here. Have an early conversation and include the spouse. So to understand what their needs are. Offer spouse career coaching. Make sure the spouse has a chance to continue with their professional career. But also take children's educational need into consideration. Some families have special needs for children's education. And make sure that the extended families, the in-laws, the parents are also, or other elderly relatives are also in your scope. For example, for health insurance, but maybe even to move with the family. How do you onboard lifestyle expats? So I think it's really helpful if you have a detailed checklist when onboarding expats from other countries. Generally, I'm very old-fashioned, so I still work with paper-based or Excel checklists in my work. But that's mainly because I haven't really found a tool yet that can do everything as quickly as I can do it with a paper checklist. I also think you could hire a global mobility specialist to help you manage the move and transactional processes, and keep the expats engaged. Stay in touch with them during the pre-hire phase and have checkpoints once they are in your country. Yeah, so for example, have a checkpoint after 90 days, 180 days. Speak to them about their experience, what they're struggling with. Consider cash flow issues and how you can help out there. It always happens that if immigration takes too long, for example, people run out of money. Make sure that they're not bootstrapped while they when they arrive at your airport and can't afford to pay a taxi, for example. And then people like Heidi and Govind, they will have special needs to be considered because she's pregnant, and obviously having a child in another country can create a bit of anxiety. So you might want to consult them on hospitals, doctors, etc. So the important thing is that you really understand what are the needs of the individual family we're talking about. I really wish that you can provide an excellent experience to lifestyle expats. The tip is listen to their needs early in the process, understand all the legal areas, work with subject matter experts, and sprinkle everything with a bit more human touch. Thank you. Helen, I'm happy to take a few questions.
Yes, we have just time enough for, that was a wonderful session, Angie, very, very good, especially because in this part of the world, global mobility, as you know, is not an in-house function. Most of it is outsourced. So I'm glad you brought some perspective for people to get started with the global mobility department internally. But let's go with one question. Global mobility in a post-COVID world. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I hope that I covered. Well, I still believe in the concept of global mobility, even though I think it's going to change a lot.
Yes.
And I still think people will be moving from one country to another, especially with the option of working from anywhere. A lot of people I heard of aspire to become digital nomads, but most companies aren't geared, or they don't really understand all of the compliance issues that come with the cross-border work. Yeah. And also the liability issue I mentioned. So a lot of companies think if I hire a provider to provide a service, so if I hire a digital nomad, they're responsible for the work permit. Yes, that's true. But if there's an issue, you're still liable as the company hiring the digital nomad. So let's just say we will all need to become experts in this field. Every HR person will need to understand this. Global mobility is no longer something that is just for a few selected talents or senior managers or partners in your organizations. You will all need to get better at these global mobility compliance issues. And in order to do that, I think it's first of all important that you have awareness of these topics.
True. And I think the next best thing for them to do is grab both your books. If they give them It'll give them a lot of insight because I know both of your books are absolutely amazing. Also, I would encourage all the audience. Angie is a sponsor as well. If you want deeper insights, one-on-one conversations, she and her team are manning the online booth. So please visit her. With that, Angie, thank you so very much for your time and appreciate it. It's great having you year on year and bringing new perspectives towards global mobility. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Helen.
You're very welcome.
And I really look forward to meeting everyone at the booth and having deeper conversations on the topic.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. We now have our next guest from LinkedIn, and his topic would be 2021 Workplace Learning Report. So he's going to be sharing a lot of it. And we are joined by Joey Kamid, head of LinkedIn Learning Solutions, and he's based out of Ireland. And just to give you a little bit, hi, Joey, there you are. How are you?
Hello, Helen. Hello,